U.S. Space Command to be released next week, August 24, 2019. The new U.S. Space Command will be officially ready by the end of the month, Vice President Mike Pence said Tuesday at a National Space Council meeting. U.S. Space Command to be released next week. Vice President Mike Pence speaks at the 6th National Space Council meeting at the National Air and Space Museum in Chantilly, Virginia, on August 20, 2019. The U.S. Space Command will be the unified military combatant command in charge of the country's space defense operations. He will become the Department of Defense's 11th Unified Combatant Command, along with the U.S. Strategic Command, the U.S. Special Operations Command, and other commands serving specific functions or geographic regions. Next week we will formally defend the new Unified Combatant Command that will be known as the U.S. Space Command, Pence said during the 6th meeting of the newly created National Space Council while he was under the Discovery Shuttle at Stevens Center. F. Udvar-Hazy of the National Air and Space Museum in Chantilly, Virginia, Joint Chief of Staff Gen. Joseph Dunford, who was also present at the meeting, said a formal ceremony to lift U.S. Space Command would take place on August 29. Effective immediately thereafter, the Space Command will consist of 87 people, under the direction of General John Raymond, who is currently the commander of the Air Force Space Command. President Donald Trump has also been promoting the idea of a Space Force, a potential sixth branch of the U.S. military, for over a year. He made it official in February with the signing of the Space Policy Directive 4, which ordered the Pentagon to establish a Space Force to go along with the Army, Navy, Air Force, Navy and Coast Guard. Although Space Force and Space Command will work together, they are not the same entity, as Deputy Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan explained via Twitter. The Space Force will serve as a provider of personnel, assets and capabilities for space operations, while Space Command will serve as the operational command that will employ space capabilities and lead space operations. Once both organizations are up and running, the differences between the Space Force and the U.S. Space Command will resemble those of the other 5 military services and 4 functional combat commands. According to Pence, the Space Force is expected to be fully operational by 2020, that is, if Congress agrees to establish and fund it. Pence said, "Space is a domain of war. The U.S. Space Force will ensure that our nation is prepared to defend our people, defend our interests, and defend our values across the vast space and here on Earth with the technologies that will support our common defense."